Rappin with ReefBum is sponsored by Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Rappin with ReefBum. I'm your host Keith Berkelhamer. Happy New Year, everybody! And well, today I have the pleasure of welcoming back Randy Donowitz. Randy helps to generate online content for Advanced Aquarist under the Reefs.com banner, and he helps to coordinate the Manhattan Reefs Frag swaps in New York City, although there hasn't been a frag swap, I guess, Randy, since before the pandemic, right?
Correct.
And Randy is also the main caretaker of the aquariums at the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York. He has been in the hobby a very long time. How many years, Randy, have you been in this hobby, would you say?
I think I entered late 1994, so whatever, you do the math.
Yeah, a long time.
Edging towards 30 years, I guess.
Yeah, me too. And finally, Randy was my first ever guest on Rappin with ReefBum back in April 2020, right when the pandemic hit.
That was right after the pandemic.
Right after the pandemic hit. So I see there's a whole bunch of folks coming into the live stream and see some familiar faces in there. Thanks, folks, for tuning in. But before we start talking with Randy, I want to thank the sponsors for the show, Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine. Really appreciate those companies supporting the show, and I also appreciate all you folks out there tuning in, and really looking forward to having some great shows in 2022. But as always, everybody, please add your comments or questions to the chat. We'll do our best to field them. So Randy, man, it's I think the last time we did talk was back in April of 2020 during the live stream, because there hasn't been a Manhattan Reefs Frag swap. So you when we were talking, there was a lot going on. There was a lot of question marks happening, and we were reeling here in New York City. April 2020, let's see, the city basically shut down on my birthday, which was March 14th, 2020. It's supposed to be my 60th birthday celebration, and literally the city shut down completely. And it was still pretty much totally shut down when we spoke last, I guess.
and stayed that way for quite a while. It was a very intense time at that time. It's very different now.
Yeah, so the last time we were talking, we were really kind of, you had a major issue because the Pratt Institute essentially shut down, right? They sent the students home, like pretty much every college and university out there. Yet you had a whole bunch of tanks that needed tending to, yet you needed to figure out a way to do that, and that was very difficult.
Yeah, it was absolutely a challenge. As we were talking casually before, my situation is kind of the reverse of what most hobbyists seem to have experienced during COVID, which was spending a lot of time at home, having a lot of time with your tanks, and getting to really work on them, improve them, rebuild them, redesign, acquire new things. Normally, my tanks are at my place of work, so I'm around them all day, so I have the advantage to most people. But once the Institute shut down, it was a real struggle. I was able to get permission to come onto campus to do really basic maintenance. Fortunately, they allowed me to do that, but I did not have time to really do proper maintenance and to really keep up with things, and combining that with the sort of commitments to my family who had sort of left the city in the thick of it. Fortunately, we had a place to be, so I was splitting my time between where they were north of the city and then coming down to be in the city. So logistically it was quite a challenge. And for those that don't know, we're not just talking about one tank, we're talking about multiple systems, and multiple systems that I usually have the assistance of numerous students helping me maintain, and none of them were around either. So it basically all fell to me in a very kind of stressful and haphazard way, with, as I guess we'll discuss, not particularly great results.
Yeah, I mean, how often were you able to get in at first, and then over the months that ensued?
Well, I mean, at the very beginning, I would kind of run in and really just make sure water top off feed and whatever simple stuff I could do, and then just sort of bail. And I was able to kind of get a hold of some automated water top off equipment, some auto feeders and that kind of thing, and was able to put systems semi-automated anyway. And then after things settled down after a couple of months, access was less of a problem, and I was able to actually be around. But there were all kinds of other logistical problems about, making enough water to be able to not only just do top-offs in all these systems, but if I'm using all my water for top-off, then I don't have any water for water changes.
Right.
And, so it's just, and it's one of those things where I couldn't, I can't just leave an RO running unattended, even auto shut off stuff at my place of work. It's just not possible. It's just not worth the risk, basically. So that became one of the real big challenges, is actually enough water to do water changes, even if I had the time. So that was a challenge, and then, we got to the point where I was around quite a bit more. But the tanks had taken such a hit that I became really sort of demoralized, and it was kind of
totally understandable.
I couldn't be around enough, and I couldn't sort of muster all the resources or people to help me to do the really big reboot that needed to be done to save systems. And really all I could do was sort of triage stuff, and it just slowly faded over time. Not everything, nothing crashed. There was no hard crash of any system. It was just slow attrition over the course of a year or more than a year. And it became very sort of dispiriting, to be honest, at a certain point. And I was kind of looking back on it now that it's sort of been reinvigorated a little bit. One of the things that was dispiriting about it, for me at least, is one of the reasons the tanks are in my office is because I get to share them with a lot of people. And that, for me, is one of the biggest joys of reef keeping, is sharing my tanks with not only other hobbyists, but non-hobbyists, students on campus, just people in the community, kids that used to come by from the community and whatnot. And there was none of that for a year. There was close to a year. I was literally the only person in the building.
Wow.
And that for me was just sort of like, why am I doing this?
Very lonely feeling.
It was very lonely and very dispiriting, and like the tanks would just look worse, and I just didn't like, then sort of Lars set in after that, to quote Joe Aiello. Lars, lazy ass reefer syndrome, set in, and I just didn't want to like do what needed to be done. It was almost like reefing depression, I guess. It's kind of
Well, yeah, I mean that is definitely a very real thing. I mean, when things aren't going well with one of my tanks, I definitely it. And I was talking about this with Sanjay when I had him on a few weeks ago. It's like you get depressed if something's not going right, but man, you had a lot that was you were up against. So I don't know how you'd really manage not to avoid any crashes, because I mean, I'm with my tanks like all the time, and if one little thing goes wrong or if one little hiccup is happening, I'm there to kind of like course correct or make that adjustment, on the fly. I mean, I get very nervous when I go away for vacation for a week,
Right,
and
sure.
I have somebody that's kind of like a house sitter or somebody that's just coming over to the house to feed the fish. And I got controllers set up and I got webcam set up, but I still get nervous because all it takes is like one little hiccup in something that you don't
Right.
anticipate, that probably can't, not everything can be covered with automation and monitoring and all that stuff. It's
Right. No, I agree completely. Yeah, I don't know. For me, like I did lose all my acros. You can see my background, and I think you'll show some videos later of what my tanks used to look like. It used to be like wall-to-wall acros.
Well, your background,
I have 0 acros left, but it's not like they all crashed at the same time. They just slowly faded away.
well, the background on your screen right there, that's Pratt Reef. That's a 240 gallon. That was, I guess, in its glory there, right? With the
yeah, that's from that photo. I think it's from 2017 or 2018. So yeah, that was pretty much the pinnacle. I mean, this tank's been set up in various formats since 2006.
I'm showing some video now of Pratt Reef, the 240 gallon tank, pre-COVID. So I think this was in the fall of 2019.
Yeah, that sounds right.
When
I can't see what you're saying.
yeah,
So.
I'll I could just kind of describe. You got we're just looking at a mixed reef, beautiful red Goniopora, looks like a lynx IceCap. That
Right.
beautiful Durusser clam. Did that clam make it?
The clam did not. The Goniopora did, though.
Oh wow.
That is one of the few stony corals I still have, as you will see in the current video.
Yeah, beautiful clownfish and some hammer corals. Love the African leopard wrasses you got whipping around there.
Yeah, those all survived.
Yep.
And the clowns just spawned yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, no, and that was a beautiful tank. So that was it about I guess 2 years ago. So let's you sent me some video of the tank now, and it's pretty much a softy only tank, right? You said you got some Goniopora in there still.
Yeah. I basically I decided, given the sort of precarious nature of our situation, we could be shut down again at any time. I didn't want to I didn't have it in me to try to rebuild this as an SPS reef. Where I really needed to simplify it. I needed a tank that, if it didn't get the required amount of attention, it would do okay for a bit in case that situation occurred again. So I had a bunch of these sort of large softy corals in another tank, and the fine folks at Alyssa's Seahorse Savvy offered to donate a bunch of Gorgonians to me, and I figured I could put together a really nice sort of old school system, which kind of had its appeal to me in a number of ways, composed of mostly soft corals, mushrooms, Gorgonians, things that, as we all know, really don't require that much attention.
No.
And I think in my situation, sharing it with students and a lot of people that are not hobbyists in some ways are maybe more attractive than the acro reef. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot, sort of. Well, it's got a different kind of appeal to it.
It's interesting because whenever I have people come over and see my tanks, the thing that always gets them are the LPS or the Goniopora or whatever, the things that are moving. And it's like, Come on, aren't you looking at the beautiful acropora there? I mean, that's the highlight of this tank. And they're like, oh, I love the movement, you know?
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, what's the first thing people see when they see my tank? They see the 2 clownfish. I mean, that's, you know, they gravitate to what they sort of know. And that's fine. So what I set out to do with this tank really was, first of all, the system really needed an almost total reboot, which I couldn't quite pull off logistically, but I came close. I was able to change out about 3/4 of the rock and about 80% of the sand.
Wow. So how did you go about doing that?
Well, finally, I was able to get some people on campus to help me. So that was, you know, students were back, and you know, so I had a bunch of hands. I literally just pulled it out. You know, I just pulled it all out. And
why did you want to pull it out? Because it was kind of encrusted with a lot of acros. It was just.
Oh, well, the sand bed was ancient, first of all. But the biggest problem that happened to this reef, just to backtrack a little bit, other than, you know, just slow attrition, was there was what turned into a massive infestation of curlicue anemones, Bartholomew, and aptasias. But I mean massive infestation. I mean like thousands of them. There was no way to treat. There was no, you know, there was no getting around it. So, you know, the reality is I should have pulled everything out, but there was no logistical way for me to hold all the fish, hold whatever corals were still alive, and, you know, and do it. So I kind of tried to find a way to not completely destroy the cycle of the tank and be able to keep the things that were living and thriving in the tank when I redid it. So I was able to pull out most of the rocks that had most of the pests on it, and I was able to pull out the sand bed and just dump new sand in. It was cloudy. It really wasn't that. I mean, the physical day of doing it was a pain.
Yeah.
But it really didn't take that long to settle down or clear, and I didn't lose any organisms.
Oh, nice.
During.
What kind of rock did you put in its place? Was that live rock, or did you put dry rock in there?
It was dry rock. It was the Carib Sea reef rock. You know, I was able to use some college budget, and that's what was easy to get on Amazon. So that's what I did. You know, so not you know, it wasn't.
So you kept some of the you kept some of the current live rock, so that'll at least help seed the.
Like when you see the video of the tank, you'll see there's like one large sort of like lump of reef that's on the left, like not the far left, but kind of the middle left side, that's basically untouched. So the sand bed is still the same under that rock, and most of that rock is just the same rock that's been there forever. And there was a bunch of rock in the sump as well, so that was enough to keep things stable.
That the reason why I'm peppering you with questions about that is because we were talking before the show, and I am gonna do a big reset on my my 187-gallon tank, and I'm going to take out all the rock, you know, and I am going to put dry rock in there. But I've got a plan. I'm not going to divulge that plan right here tonight, but you know, I'm just trying to pump as many fellow reef keepers as possible, you know, for info in terms of how they've done those sorts of you know, midstream reboots for reef tanks. But I think it's very important to try to keep as much of the bacteria intact as possible. Absolutely. Especially if I want to continue to do what I want to do, which is an SPS dominant tank. But the sand bed I'm nervous about pulling out, and I think what I'll do in my tank is you know, leave most of the sand in there. I've got some sand that's actually calcified that
yes. I was just going to say that we literally had in some areas 4-inch thick pieces of concrete. Yeah, basically. Yeah, that had to be chiseled out in like bricks.
Really, you had to chisel it out?
It wasn't easy to get out.
Oh man, I don't want to hear that, Randy, because that's what I'm going to be dealing with.
My assistant Brian, the credit, I didn't have the technique to get it out. He was able to. He's a lot younger than me. He was able to get it out.
Man, see, that makes me nervous about having to kind of use that kind of force. So you drained that tank, or did you do this underwater?
Did it underwater.
Did it underwater with a chisel.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, that scares the crap out of me.
Not heavy hammering. You're able to sort of like work the chisel in and kind of pry a little bit. You know, you have to sort of finesse it a little. I just
figure when I'm gonna, you know, end up doing this, and I'm just gonna be in there, just jiggle, and it'll come right out. You know, just take.
Some sections did.
Okay.
maybe you'll get lucky. Again, this was the original sand bed from 2006. So,
Oh, yeah. All right. This is only like 6 years old.
And much of it had been under the rock that I removed, so it was compressed.
Yeah, the parts of my sand bed that have calcified are pretty much like on the outside of the rock work. So I think it's pretty much I've got sand underneath the rock work and in between the two islands that I have, and then on the corners I've got this calcified sand. So I definitely would like to get that swapped out. But I will put those pieces into the sump just because I'm assuming there's a lot of good healthy bacteria in.
Yeah, I think it's important to maintain, a reasonable amount of what's been really stable for you. I mean, I think, as we know more, as we kind of have always known, but we know more and more, really it's all about bacteria.
So I've had a lot of discussion on this show about bacteria and the importance of keeping a healthy population. When I was talking to Mike Paletta, he was talking about how he's been conversing with a lot of fellow veteran reef keepers, and it just seems like there's a lot of issues that have been going on with the among that crew of folks that have been keeping reef tanks for a very long time. It's like one thing or another. It's dinos, or it could be RTN, STN events, which is what he has been dealing with. Bacteria dosing for me was never on my radar until about a year ago, and I don't know. What are your thoughts in terms of this whole bacteria dosing and bacteria testing thing that's going on in the hobby?
Well, I think it's very interesting. I don't know that I'm an expert on the subject by any means. I do think it's interesting. I think we do know that microbiomes in the reef are critically important. I think when we used to have good quality live rock to start systems, that sort of took care of itself to a large degree. Right. I think now that most of us are not starting reefs with high quality live rock, I think that becomes a bigger issue. And I think probably some sort of bacterial dosing, I think, is probably very important. Which bacteria, how much, et cetera, I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's yeah, I've actually.
So it becomes a little more of a crapshoot there, and as other folks probably maybe know or don't know, there's another 130-gallon Waterbox tank that was.
All right, I'm going to show the video before the pandemic on the Waterbox. So this was So this was a new system that I set up about a year prior to the pandemic that was really designed to be kind of big tabling acros, just sort of the acro heaven of my dreams. But it was a tank that I decided to try to set up bare bottom, which is something I'd never done before. And it was started using all dead rock, Marco and some other rock. Love the scape on it.
Somebody gave me. Yeah, very happy with the scape. I had all the right equipment, everything. There shouldn't be any problem with this system. Except there was nothing but problems with the system. It never settled in. I had a giant dinoflagellate problem at first. That kind of settled down after several months of playing around with various things, including bacteria.
Oh, yeah.
But corals, would nice healthy corals would, settle in, they'd look great, and then all of a sudden they'd just start crap. And I could never really get a handle on why. It was just one of those systems. I think people who've been in the hobby a long time know just sometimes there's something about a system that just doesn't settle down.
Right.
And this one just never settled down.
Never got into its groove.
Never got into its groove. And then the pandemic hit, and whatever coral were barely hanging on in there just had no chance at all. It does contain some of my nicer fish, though, and it's actually a
Ventralis anthias are awesome.
Yeah, that group of Ventralis are just
how many did you put in, and how many do you have left?
I started with 7 that I got from Kevin Cohn at Live Aquaria. I believe these are not Cook Islands. They're from the Philippines. And, they're notoriously difficult, and with a very poor survival rate. But when I was chatting with Kevin, he said, I got this group in, and they just seem to be the healthiest group I've ever gotten. So I was like,
Score.
Okay, I'll try. I'll bite. And he sent me 7, and I lost 1 early on, and I still have all the others.
Wow.
Gorgeous and a bunch of females, and it's been 2 years, over 2 years.
Wow,
now.
and so they survived the pandemic. I mean, you basically had an auto feeder going on these fish.
That was one of the challenges, actually, was keeping the tanks, because they don't eat
pellets.
They don't eat flake or pellets.
Yeah.
They'll really only eat frozen foods, but they were solid enough that they could go 2 or 3 days without eating if that's what it had to be.
Wow, because usually
I had a
Anthias.
feeder on there. I had maybe they were taking some pellets and stuff, because I have there's a Regal Angel and a Majestic Angel and a Yellow Tang in there as well. So I had a feeder on there for those fish, and maybe they were taking some stuff in the interim. It's a little hard to say. I never see them take prepared food like that, though.
Wow.
And interestingly, the male is the pickiest of all of them. I don't know if anybody else has had that experience with them. The male doesn't even like normal mysis shrimp. He likes brine shrimp and fish eggs. Roe from Reef Nutrition seems to be the thing he likes the most. The smaller females will take a wider variety of frozen things more readily for some reason.
I would have to say that I love Anthias, and I've had not the greatest luck with Anthias. My best success has been with Lartail Anthias. Those seem to be Anthias that I can keep.
Sure.
I've tried Bimax a long time ago, and some other types of Anthias. Can't remember the other ones that I tried, but I might have tried some Ventralis years and years ago without any luck. But man, those are gorgeous Anthias, and I thought you had to keep them at a cooler temperature than you normally would.
They say that, and I guess I tend to run my tanks around 76, 77 anyway, which is cool-ish, I guess. Not maybe the 72, 74 that people seem to recommend for Ventralis, but I don't know. Maybe it's that these were from the Philippines and not the Cook Islands. Maybe they're slightly different in their sort of natural habitat. I don't know. I believe Anthony Concialdi is a Long Island reef keeper. He also got a group of the same batch from Kevin, and they're also doing really well for him.
Jason Langer in the chat has commented, were those the same Ventralis that were being conditioned with Andrew's peppermint? And Andrew, I had him on the 17,000 Sandler, yeah.
It's possible. I don't know that for sure, Jason. It's entirely possible. But for whatever reason, they've been super solid, and I couldn't be happier. So the big decision is what to do with this tank now. Now that I've got the big reef kind of sorted out, what do I do with this water box that's set up to be an acro heaven, but is really just a fish-only tank? At the moment.
So basically, you've had the you've had the dry rock in there for how many years now?
It's like 2 years.
2 years. Now. So maybe you've got
plenty of corals in the back. I've been putting all kinds of bacteria from various companies and products. It should be good to go.
Yeah.
But now there are nutrient problems. There's because there haven't been corals in it. I haven't really been paying attention to the water quality all that much. So nitrates are high, phosphates are high. Things that can be dealt with, though. Those are things you can deal with.
Have you been getting? So I've got you sent me a video of oops, I got the wrong one there. Let's see, Waterbox post pandemic here. So yeah, here's I guess that's the male Ventralis swimming around. Got some nice coralline going on the rock. It doesn't look like you have an algae problem in that tank.
I have no algae problem at the moment. So again, if I get the nutrients under control, it should be good to go for corals. So I'm basically toying with, do I want to go down that road again and see if I can get that to be the tank that it was intended to be? Or do I want to just leave it as a fish-only tank where everything's happy and simple? And then I do have a 40-gallon Cobalt all-in-one sort of tank that's kind of just has some random soft corals, and it sort of duplicates what the big reef is now, and it's kind of like it's silly to have a second tank doing the same thing. So part of me says maybe I'll just turn that and try doing acros and that in a 40-gallon volume, which I can really take care of almost everything just by doing water changes.
Yeah, it's a lot easier than the larger tank. Yeah. So all right, so if you did have to, if you did try to give another go to the water box in terms of acros, so now.
Well, I added a sand bed already.
So you got a sand bed in there already. All right.
I put a sand bed in. It's a thin one. I would probably add a little more sand.
So besides the sand bed and the dry versus live rock, anything else you would have done differently with that tank?
Not that I can think of. You know, that's been the frustrating thing about it is, you know, like we mentioned, I've been doing this a long time. I kind of know how to start a tank. I've started many. I've grown, as you can see, I've grown acros successfully, very successfully before. And this just didn't do what it was supposed to do, despite me doing what I always do.
Yeah, and, no, it's frustrating. It is. I mean, you know, I think one thing that I've theorized too is that, and this kind of comes back to the bacteria thing, is that the equipment that we have these days is a lot more efficient, right? We've got much stronger skimmers, the filtration, you know, the sumps or whatnot, mechanical filtration is much better. So, you know, is that pulling too much out of the water? Is it too efficient? And is that stripping out the water to the point where, you know, you do have to dose bacteria now? I don't know. I mean, when I was talking to Sanjay about it, you know, he's like, you know, prove to me that bacteria are getting skimmed out. You know, I'd like to see data on that. But I don't know. It's
right. Yeah, that wouldn't be the case for my. I think you might be right for a lot of people. That wouldn't be the case for my tank. It's not like it's a relatively underskimmed. You know what I mean? I don't have like a giant filtration system on that one, and any of my tanks really.
What do you have lighting on top of the water box?
That's got an Illumagic LED fixture. Just a nice lighting system. I usually use Radions in most of my systems. I had an opportunity to check out something new. Don't think the lighting was the problem. Seen many beautiful systems using that lighting system. You know, the Delua Great White skimmer on it, which is a fine skimmer for that size tank. And you know, I keep it. You know, I'm not like an equipment guy really. I'm not like never have been.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, listen, you don't have to like, you know, be too complicated in terms of having a great successful reef tank in terms of the gear and stuff like that, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Before we get to the planted tank, let's show the anemone tank.
Oh yeah.
And so how was this impacted during the pandemic?
Not too bad. I mean, you know, they tend to like funky water to begin with, so it's not a tank that I typically do a lot of maintenance on to begin with. They suffered a little. You can, they're a little bleachy. You can see they're not like bleached, but they're a little paler than they used to be, and you know they're recovering a bit now. Now that I'm around to give them a little more care, do a few water changes on them. But these anemones date back 20 years or more. The original one comes from Greg Scheimer. Some of you may remember Greg, a long-time Seminole, New York area reef hobbyist who passed way too young. And he gave me two, I believe. It's got to be at least 20 years ago. I can't even remember when he gave them to me. And they were in a different system for most of their life. I moved them back to this system maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Not even 4, maybe 3 years ago. I've cloned themselves like crazy. I've given away 3 times as many as you see there over the years. And they're actually, those of you who've been out to the Long Island Aquarium and seen the giant anemone tank there, they're the same anemones. They all come from Greg. Actually.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. So what advice would you have for somebody that wants to try to start up a tank like that? Like, you know, like a clownfish harem tank with a whole bunch of anemones in that. I mean, what's the best way to go about doing that? Is it just luck at some point, or?
In terms of getting the anemones to thrive, or
Just being able to have that many clownfish in the same tank.
oh, the clowns. Yeah, the clowns are interesting. Those are all Sanjay's black photons.
Yeah.
So I think you got to put them in all at the same time, and when they're small, and that's kind of like what the secret has been there. They all grew up together, and they're used to being with each other. I think at a certain point, somebody's going to start getting some ideas about who's the boss.
Oh, there really hasn't been any clear cut.
It hasn't happened yet. Yeah, there's a little like tail shaking, and this is my anemone, you go over there kind of thing, but no chasing and no real aggression at all. And again, they've been in there 3 years together, I guess. Yeah.
I love clownfish, and I've always kept a pair in each tank. In my new Peninsula tank, which is 6 foot long by 3 foot wide by 20 inches tall, I really wanted to get 2 pairs of clownfish in that tank. I thought it was big enough and long enough to do that. So I had 2 different pairs in 2 different frag tanks. So I put them in together. The pairs in together, and
Right.
they got along great. It was weird because the pairs were kind of like mixing up at times. Like one would be hanging out with the other, and vice versa.
Interesting.
But then
Yeah.
at night they would all kind of like be sleeping together in one corner of the tank,
Right.
which
Right,
was
right,
bizarre.
right.
I mean, there's no anemones in this tank, and then unfortunately, like a few weeks ago, I lost one. So I've got 3 in the tank. And I'm like, all right, what are the odds of me being able to pick up a single clownfish, put that clownfish in that tank, and keep the fingers crossed that nothing's going to happen?
I think you have a chance. I mean, it could go either way. It certainly needs to be the smallest of them if you're going to add one.
Yeah.
Or way bigger than all the others.
So here's an interesting thing, because I'm not going to mention the company. Oh, they did me a solid. Maybe I should mention the company. But so today I got, I ordered a clownfish, and online, because I'm in the middle of nowhere and I really can't go to too many local fish stores. So I pretty much get all my livestock online. So I got the delivery today, came in, and I opened up the box, and I wanted to have 1 clownfish to put into that tank, and kept my to keep my fingers crossed that it would pair up with the single clown and not get beat up by the other clownfish. Yet there was 2 clownfish in the box. So, I guess there's just an overabundance of clownfish that they decided
There's a lot of clowns in the
to
world.
send me an extra clownfish. So I don't know, Randy. I don't know what to do at this point. I put the 2 clownfish in that they send me in a frag tank, and
Yeah.
do I put 2 clownfish in with 3 clownfish? I think that's going to be, I don't know. What would you do if you were in my shoes?
That's a really good question. I don't know. Are you a gambling man? I don't know.
Because I kind of feel bad about breaking them up, right? Because maybe
Right.
they're like a pair, and so I don't know, man.
Set up a tank for him, Keith.
Set up
That's what
another
you do.
tank.
Yeah.
I got too much.
Clownfish, they really have personalities. Like, it's like, sometimes they're really compliant and mellow, and sometimes they can be really nasty.
Yeah, no.
Right. I have a pair of lightning maroon clowns that's in that Cobalt 40 that I was telling you about. Beautiful fish. But maroons can be real bastards.
Yeah, they are
sometimes,
pretty tough.
They bite your hand when you put them in. Never with these. There's nothing. Like no aggression towards any other fish I put in there, and they don't pay any attention to me. But I know other maroons that are just like vicious.
Yeah, I don't know. I might. They're kind of like on the small side, so I want to keep them in the frag tank and let them get a little bit bigger. But maybe I'll just throw them in there and take.
Maybe try an in-tank acclimation box for a bit. See how the others react.
There you go. Yeah. That's definitely something.
I find that it's certainly nothing revolutionary and new on my part, but I find those to be very, very helpful when introducing new fish. If it's just for a couple of days, you don't need to keep them in there too long. If nothing else, you can observe them and make sure they're eating well.
That's a good
whatnot.
idea. All right, man. So speaking of extra tanks, you picked up an extra one recently, right?
Well, yeah. So the flip side of the sad COVID story is
I'm showing the video of it.
Yeah, shortly before COVID hit, a local hobbyist donated an entire Red Sea reefer system to us. For folks that don't know, this is not an aquarium shop or anything. This is a college campus. This is my office, which is the campus writing center, and I've just been able to like put tanks all over the place.
It's really awesome. Yeah, if you're in
I
Brooklyn,
have very understanding bosses, and to those that don't know Pratt, it's an art and design school. It's kind of a wacky place to begin with, and students just love it. So anyway, I was given this entire reef system, and then I was like, the last thing I need in my life is another reef tank. So I had the idea that something that I've always wanted to try, and that actually a number of the students were freshwater hobbyists, was I'd never really done a planted freshwater tank. So I figured, why can't I just turn this tank into a planted freshwater tank? I can still use the lights. I can use, I won't use the sump. I can, I could just modify it, make it into a very nice, hopefully a very nice planted freshwater tank. So that's what I did. And we set that up in February, about a month or so before COVID hit. And so we got that tank planted and set up in live aquaria, donated a bunch of fish, and we had, it was looking really nice. And then the pandemic hit. But the good news is, it doesn't care if I'm not there to take care of it so much. Right? So what happened was it thrived.
oh wow,
And, so with minimal care, so the water evaporates a little. It's down an inch or two by the time I get there. No problem.
you don't have to worry about that.
Right? There's no salinity to worry about. It doesn't matter, right? Even if the plants are sticking out of the water a little bit, it never gets. Oh, but that wouldn't even be a problem. And you put an automatic feeder on there, boom, you're done. And it proved to be very, very easy to take care of comparatively. Now, I will add, this was set up with like anubias and simple plants. For those serious freshwater folks out there, I'm in no way saying that a high-tech freshwater planted tank with CO2 and all that.
No CO2 in this tank?
Complicated or no?
Wow.
That can't be as complicated or more complicated than caring for a reef tank. That I know that to be true, but that's not what this tank is. All right, this is like simple, easy plants and a whole bunch of fish. I'm sort of like it's a planted tank, but it's a fish tank. I know a lot of like planted tank guys are planted tank guys with a few fish, right? That's not what I envisioned. I wanted a lot of fish.
It looks incredible.
With some plants. And it just thrived, and I loved it. So I would, the depression of the reef situation that was going on, I was buoyed by the success of the freshwater thing. That's been a really pleasant sort of revisiting of sort of the origins of my hobby. Like most people, was a freshwater tank when you were a kid or whatnot. And so with that tank, as you just showed the video, is like really, really nice now. I'm very happy with it. It's easy to get fish, tons of species to choose from. It's affordable. It's like the entire cost of livestock in that tank is like the equivalent to a high-end acanthophilia. It's seriously. So that's been a very pleasant sort of addition to my hobby world, to the point where, while I was sitting there, alone in the office watching my reefs fade and not really having the ability or the motivation to kind of like reboot them properly, I was able to take those little 5-10 gallon tanks that were just sitting in the corners collecting dust and set up a new freshwater tank every week or so very easily, just by taking, some of the gravel from the big tank, do some plant cuttings and blah, blah, blah. And now we have about 7 little freshwater tanks in addition to this one big one.
So it's
set up around the place.
Spawning.
It is spawning. So I actually, today, if you'll permit me to read, I actually have, we have the 210 gallon reef. We have the Waterbox 130 that we talked about. We have the 180 gallon Anemone tank. We have the 40 gallon Cobalt tank. We have the 110-gallon planted tank. We have a 72-gallon bow front with a big eel in it that we've had forever. That didn't mind COVID either. That eel doesn't care about anything. My assistant Brian has a little 3-gallon saltwater nano on his desk. I've got a 20-gallon killifish tank and about 6 other freshwater nano tanks now in the office, and a couple of rescue betas that students bestowed on me when they were forced to bail out of the dorms.
Wow.
In a minute.
Wow.
So we have a lot of aquariums there. And again, the freshwater ones are very easy to care for. So there's a lot in number, but the actual amount of effort is pretty minimal.
You know, I before I started keeping reef tanks, I started with a planted 29-gallon planted tank, and man, I did not have a green thumb. I don't know what it was. I thought the reason why I wasn't having success was because I wasn't using CO2, but I just couldn't, you know, keep the plants growing. It was constantly, I would you know, put some plants in there and they wouldn't, there would be no growth, and I would have to replace them, and it was just kind of like a losing battle for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I didn't know what to, you know, again, I had no experience keeping a planted tank at all. I mean, you know, I talked to some people, you know, I used good substrate. I have good repurposed radions that I had that came with that tank, and just run them on the freshwater setting. So, you know, it's a low-tech tank in the sense that there's no CO2, and I'm not trying to do anything really fancy and difficult with it, but it's kind of not exactly low-tech either. It's kind of like mid-tech, because the lighting is very good and the substrate's very good. And, you know.
I love your choice of fish. My favorite freshwater fish when I had my tank were Congo tetras. I think those are just so cool when you get like a big school of them. And
yeah, that was always one of my favorite fish when I was a lot younger too. And you know, but I never had the ability to keep a large school. And big props to Live Aquaria there. They offered to send me some, and I opened the box and there were 30 of them.
Really? Holy smokes!
Yeah.
Jeez.
So I'm like, okay. So they are definitely the dominant species in that tank. You know, and I think a lot of people would say that tank is overstocked with fish, which it probably is, but I'm not quite sure what that means exactly. You know, they're happy, they're healthy, they're, you know, aesthetically maybe for some people it's overstocked, but it's like, you know, the plants are growing, some of the fish are breeding, the fish are, you know, there's no aggression going on.
We're getting a lot of kudos for your planted tank there, and
oh
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. What else was I going to ask you? So let's talk about Manhattan Reefs, man. What's up in Manhattan Reefs? I know, you know.
Well, we're kind of in limbo. I mean, you know, for those of you, you know, everybody's impacted by COVID, but those of us in New York City were certainly more impacted than most, I think, and continue to be. In many ways, just because of the conditions of the city. So many people living so close together, and you know, it just makes gatherings of any sort really challenging. And you know, there are city restrictions and all kinds of restrictions and whatnot, and just, you know, being sensible, reasonable people. So we, for many years on campus, hosted a very, you know, active 400-person frag swap. Keith's been many times. You know, it was like a real fixture on the hobbyist scene in the tri-state area.
Yeah, I miss seeing a lot of my friends there. You know,
we used to do 2 a year. One I would host at Pratt, and the other one would be at Pace University in Manhattan. Yep. We sort of lost access to the Pace venue in the past few years, but you know, the Pratt one, we did a really nice one. That last one you were at, it was one of our best swaps actually, but there's just no way we can do one, and finding additional venues in New York City is virtually impossible. I mean, unless you have an inn somewhere, I mean, it's just not possible, you know. So we would very much like to do a swap as soon as possible, but I can barely, I would have a hard time getting you personally on campus right now, let alone 400 anonymous people.
Right.
You know?
Have you ever thought about trying to find a location, you know, outside of the city that might be
it's possible, you know. Yeah, maybe, but you know, the Long Island group does their thing out on Long Island. They do a good job with that, so we don't want to sort of encroach on that. You know, and you know, there's also like logistic stuff. You know, if you don't have the core people who are putting the thing on living in proximity to where it's going to be, it becomes very, very challenging.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
No, it's true.
So that's where we're at, and I know it's not just so easy to find a school or a VHF hall in New York City that's going to let you do that, especially right now.
Yeah.
It's different. I know it's different in other places, or like renting a space in a hotel, just virtually, absolutely impossible. I mean, it's just no way.
Have you guys thought about trying to do something, more have a larger presence online? I mean, there's Reefs.com, Manhattan, Reefs.
Yeah, it's Josh Saul handles most of that as opposed to me, and we try, but it's a struggle. There's a lot of competition now.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff has moved to Facebook. A lot of stuff has moved to various other places. And, with the thing that grounded those communities, in my mind, those online communities, were the once or twice or three times a year big in-person event where people would really see each other and interact in person. And that enabled those online communities to really thrive. At least that's the way I see it. And you sort of remove that sort of in-person thing, people drift away, people just become sort of anonymous names on a board, selling corals becomes the primary activity as opposed to sort of conversation. And, it's a bit of a struggle. I mean, I'm not being critical of it. I'm just saying it's changed,
I really enjoy the frag swaps. I mean, I think, that really at its core is what reef keeping is all about, is getting together and seeing some old friends, trading corals. I mean, that's what frag swaps are all about. It's like not going and seeing the wallet vomit, right? It's going there. If you got some nice corals and your reef keeping, buddies have got some nice corals, doing a swap. I've been doing some swaps recently online with some reef keeping buddies. So it's that's kind of like the cool thing, though, being in person and being able to do that sort of thing and connecting with people and developing relationships. That's the core of,
again, that's super important to me. Like I was saying earlier, it's like that aspect of it that you're talking about, very much so. But again, the sort of just the casual person interacting with my tanks and seeing them is really, for me, that's like a big part of the hobby. Thankfully, we've got a little bit of it back now. We have students back on campus. I still can't get guests on very easily, though. So, we used to really be a hub for the national and international sort of reef guys that would come through the city. They would come to the office and, check stuff out. We'd hang out. We'd go have beers, go have dinner, whatnot. And it's I just can't get them on campus right now. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, that's a drag. All right,
we'll loosen up a little bit, I think. But,
hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully it's gonna get better soon. So we got we're going back to possibly talking about your Waterbox here again, Randy. Luis is asking, can you ask Randy if he's ever used Miracle Mud?
I have not.
You have not?
I have not. I remember back in the day, many beautiful tanks that were using Miracle Mud. I think Mike Paletta has been posting some stuff on his Facebook page. Those of you who have access to that, showing some really Lang's old system, which is really beautiful, and some other tanks using Miracle Mud. Maybe that's the answer to my problem. I don't know. I've just never.
I've never done it either. I've never tried it either. But I know Mike has had seems to love that stuff.
Yeah.
Michael Baldwin, I sent him some frags yesterday. Everything arrived in excellent condition. Awesome, man. Send me some pictures.
Tough time for shipping too, right?
It is. Yeah. It is really tough, I definitely laid low during the holidays, but I've been shipping a lot of stuff out this week, but yeah, I was afraid actually, because you see all these flights being canceled because people are out sick. So how does that impact the freight companies? In terms of FedEx, the overnight shipping companies? I don't know. Are they impacted too, or like you getting pilots that are calling in sick?
Yeah, so that's a problem. And New York City, in the best of times, shipping stuff is a pain in the butt because, like, you live in an apartment building. They got to get into the building. You miss the buzzer. They don't leave the package. Then you got to, they leave it somewhere. It's a half-hour drive away to go pick it. It's
Right. Have you been going to any like local fish stores? Do you still like go out and about and check out
I
stuff?
have been to a few. I've been venturing out. I've got to be, we're still trying to be cautious around here. One of the reasons folks may not know, I live with my 94-year-old dad lives with us, so I need to be a little extra cautious. I have been going mostly for freshwater stuff recently, just because there's a bunch of really small kind of fun, funky little old freshwater shops around Brooklyn here that are easy to get to.
Yeah.
Those to get to decent saltwater stuff's a bit more of a commitment to get there.
Yeah.
I did this weekend go to a big store out on Long Island that was both fresh and salt, which was fun. It's nice to get back out to stores.
How have you found the local fish stores to be during the pandemic? I mean, is it? I'm assuming that they've kind of been. Well, I guess people are having more time to spend with their tanks, so maybe they're going out and perusing.
I sense they're doing okay.
Good.
I can't speak to their bottom line really, but it seems like most of them are staying in business. And when I go there, I'm usually not the only person there, and I do think a lot of stores are sort of pivoting to freshwater to some degree, though, or at least stores that were exclusively marine are sort of thinking about in a freshwater element because it's just a much larger segment of the hobby.
Yeah, no, interesting. So, Randy, at the beginning I mentioned that you're essentially Reefs.com is now, I guess, Advanced Aquarist is the new banner you're operating under.
Well, no, Reefs.com is the banner, and so I was the editor for Reefs Magazine.
Right, Reefs Magazine. I'm sorry.
Right. And we had the opportunity to acquire Advanced Aquarist magazine, the magazine that was run by my mentor and longtime Pratt colleague Terry Siegel. So a couple of years ago, we were given the opportunity to acquire Advanced Aquarist, and we did so. And since that clearly had the larger brand name over Reefs Magazine, we decided to fold everything into Advanced Aquarist. So all the Reefs Magazine material is available still under on Reefs.com, but under the Advanced Aquarist banner. Well, to be honest, we haven't really done much with Advanced Aquarist for a variety of reasons, but we plan to sort of reinvigorate it in the coming year, start publishing some new material, so recycling some of the greatest hits from their very vast catalog of quality stuff, and so that's kind of where that sits right now.
What about trade shows? So I know Reefs.com has been at some Reefapaloozas and what have you, but I guess you guys didn't make the last one in New Jersey. Is the plan to, depending on what's going on with COVID, get back into the trade show circuit?
Yeah, it depends what's going on with COVID, really. For us, we don't have a product to sell necessarily, so it's really more just like a branding event for us. So it's got to work for everybody. Who's people have to commit to manning the table and doing all that. But yeah, we like going to the events just because we like seeing all the people, and we hold raffles and we just try to do some fun stuff there and just sort of get the word out. But yeah, I would hope we start resuming doing that.
What about MACNA next September? I mean, if you guys as an organization don't go, would you go?
Yeah, I intend to go. I've been to every MACNA since Louisville, the second Louisville in the late 1990s. So yeah, I personally intend to go. I don't know if Reefs.com will have a presence or not. We haven't really discussed that yet, but it's possible. But again, pandemic. Assuming I will definitely.
I'm in the same boat. I mean, I am planning on going, but if well, who knows what it's going to look like in September, right? I mean,
Right.
who knows?
It's just impossible to predict anything. I know. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm toying with, MASNA is actually putting on a second show, a combined freshwater saltwater show in Atlanta in April, early April. That's a new thing for them, and I'm kind of interested in going to that too. But who knows what's going on in April? I can't. It's hard to commit to these things right now.
I know. At this point, I am planning on going to the Reefapalooza in June, assuming that we'll get through this big spike. But if it keeps going up, then maybe not.
Right. And I'd like to go to an Aquashella sometime too. I've never been to one of those, but it's sort of like not exactly my demographic, but I hear they do a great job, so it would be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So Randy, what else, man? What do you think in terms of the future? For the tanks at Pratt.
Well, I'm real happy with the rebuild of the big reef. I think for that tank, I want to keep it simple, but I do plan on adding some not particularly challenging LPS and maybe some Zoas.
I'm going to send you a whole bunch of Zoas.
Okay, cool. That's great. So that kind of stuff. So just sort of like balancing out like the livestock profile there a little bit, adding little pops of color here and there. I probably want to add some more fish to the system. Got a really cool thing going on right now with a pair of Genacanthus watanabe in that tank.
Oh, right.
I had a pair for a long time, 9-10 years, a really nice pair. And I lost the male. That's one fish I did lose during COVID. I don't know if it was related to neglect or it was just his time to go. It was hard to say. But I lost the male. And as some of you may know, it's very hard to find healthy adult male Genacanthus angels. So I've had this female in there for, close to year and a half now. And she got really big and fat. And a friend of mine was breaking down his tank a few weeks ago and happened to have another female Genacanthus watanabe, which is something I was planning on trying to acquire one or two more in hopes of turning my large female male. So he actually gave me his female and a couple other fish. And within a week, my female started changing sex.
Really? Wow.
And is now a week on, I'd say 80% of the way there. It's really remarkable. I've been trying to document it every day, taking photos. So that's been kind of fun.
I had never had a fish, well, besides the Anthias, but I had never had a fish change sex while I was in my care until about a year ago. And so I have 3 leopard wrasses in the 187-gallon tank. I've got a Chioti leopard wrasse, which I love. It's jumped out twice. It's jumped
one of the rare ones that lived.
Yeah, it's jumped out twice, but it's still there. Well, and the first time it jumped out, I found it, and it was actually sort of dried out. Put it in the tank, and it just miraculously
back up. That's amazing.
Yeah,
too.
it is amazing. And then I also have a black spotted leopard wrasse, which is a cool fish, and I guess it was a female African leopard wrasse.
The bipartitis.
Yeah. And after a couple of years, so I came down one day looking at the fish tank, and all of a sudden I saw this wrasse that I had never seen before in my fish tank, and it like freaked me out. I was like, what the hell is this? Who put this tank? I was like, what? Right. What the hell? It's like completely changed, like overnight. I guess it turned to male.
With that same fish, I had a trio of females of the bipartitis, and for years, they were a solid trio. And then all of a sudden, they started picking on one of the 3 out of nowhere, and they killed off one. And then there was this pair of females. And then, just like you, one day I came in and I was like, what the hell? What's fish is that?
Who's messing with me?
Right. And one of them had changed. And like, you know, it changed significantly in like the day or two before I noticed the change. And then over the next week or so, it fully changed. Now it's a gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous fish.
Now it harasses the remaining female constantly, though.
Do you think I could add another female in there, or is that just probably?
Yeah, that I would do a very slow introduction in an acclimation box.
Yeah.
And you have to put some sand in the acclimation box too. For that, right?
Yeah. I love those fish, but I love the females. You know, so it would be nice to have another female in there. But yeah, I'm not sure I want to roll the dice. Chris from Chris from ACA Aquaculture.
Oh, hey, Chris.
Is asking, does Randy have any room in his tanks? Laugh out loud.
So, have any room in my tanks? What?
Meaning that
it depends, Chris.
Depends on the tank.
It depends on the tank. It depends what I might want to add.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always room for more, as we all know.
So speaking of changing sex in terms of fish, one fish that I love is a Japanese masked swallowtail angelfish.
The semifasciatus?
Yeah. And a couple of times I've put a trio of females in my tank, hoping that one would turn male. And it has not worked out that way. It has not worked out.
I had the same exact experience with a trio of semifasciatus. Never changed. They just never changed. And then they slowly, like, they killed off one, they killed off the other. Yeah, that's
what happened.
And the remaining one turned into a very ugly fish.
I still have one left. It's huge.
Right.
And
that's my experience with that with that species as well.
But the thing that is interesting is that these days those fish and you know, the angels you're talking about, not cheap. It seems like prices have gone up a lot.
Prices have gone up a lot. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons why, and it's it seems, certainly to people who've been in the hobby a long time, it's like really noticeable how much prices have gone up. I understand the sort of market pressures on it and why, and you know, I think there's cases to be made for the hobby being a little expensive, not necessarily being a bad thing, in the sense that it forces people to really care for what they're putting money down. But on the other hand, the barrier to entry for a reef tank is getting really, really steep, and it's hard to get new people in, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of corals out there that you know, beautiful corals that you could really, you know, get on the cheap if you know how to find them and all that stuff. You know, fish, you know, I guess there's fish out there that are not terribly,
fish is tough.
But yeah,
fish, you know, fish prices have really, really gone up. You know, I love fairy wrasses. I like, you know, I've always kept a lot of fairy wrasses. I don't have any right now, and I really got sticker shock when I went to, like, you know, check some out. You know, like a fairy wrasse that used to be $90 is like $350 now.
Right. I mean, I understand in terms of you know, like Hawaii being shut down and other areas that are difficult to you know, collect fish in.
Supply chain stuff, freight costs. I understand all the pressures, but still, you know, some people are, you know, I've always been like, this is not a good investment in terms of money. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean? You're investing in something that's got just as good a chance of dying as it does of thriving. So, you know, when something gets up there into the many hundreds of dollars, personally, I like give pause.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to try the Ventralis Anthias. I really would, but I think you got pretty lucky because
I did.
You got a great connection there in terms of a you know, from Kevin and you know, a group that he gave his thumbs up to in terms of being well conditioned. But those fish are not cheap, right? I mean, you're probably talking $300 per fish or something, maybe more.
Was on them right now, but yeah, I mean, you know, yes. So again, not cheap, you know, which brings me back to the freshwater thing. You know, it's like for somebody who's just getting started, you know, I want to, you know, I'm a marine hobbyist. I love the marine hobby, but for somebody that's really just getting started, start with a freshwater tank.
Yeah.
You know, build a really beautiful freshwater tank and cut your teeth and, you know, learn to love the hobby and, like, you know, sort of the basics are the same in terms of, setting up a stable system and a cycle and, lighting and water movement and water chemistry. It's like, learn the stuff. And then, when you're set, you can kind of venture into the marine side of things. This is kind of where I've sort of come back to. I mean, it's possible to. I mean, many people just start with saltwater stuff and have very good success, but
sort of rare.
I don't know if
yeah,
that's the smartest way to go.
Yeah. Chris is saying that, and I was going to bring this up. Freight alone has everything to do with the fish pricing lately. Thank COVID for that. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah, I'm sure.
Reef the sea forever. Remember the day when you can get yellow tangs for $20 and Achilles tangs for $45. Laugh out loud.
Yep, it's true.
Yeah, those days are sort of long gone.
Yeah.
Well, Randy, man, anything else you wanted to mention or say?
I was say, I think that there's a lot of good stuff happening in the hobby too. I think the aquaculture side of things is very encouraging. I'm wearing my Biota shirt here.
Oh, there you go.
There, I think they're a company amongst others that are doing some really good work. Culturing fish, kind of leading the sustainable hobby movement, which I think is important. I'm not opposed to wild caught things if it's done responsibly, but I think aquaculture has a big role to play, and I think it's going to inevitably be increasingly a bigger part of the hobby just because of the nature of the world. And anything we can do to support the folks who are doing it right, we should do.
Hear, hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anything else you wanted to plug in terms of Reefs.com? I mean, Advanced Aquarist.
Well, I don't know. Please come check us out. There's a lot of good content on there. There's like sort of daily, up-to-date kind of stuff. Richard Beck.
Richard's awesome.
Does all his videos posted up there, and we stream a lot of content from other. We stream your stuff. We stream Tidal Garden stuff, so that you can find a lot of stuff in one place there, as well as a bunch of original content. And then there's tons of back catalog stuff, all the Reefs Magazine articles, which I help produce, the Advanced Aquarist stuff. There's active bulletin boards there, marketplace. There's tons of stuff there. We're a very inclusive community, and we pride ourselves on that. And so come check us out.
Cool. All right, Randy. Well, listen, man, it was great talking to you again. I guess we shouldn't be so long in between chats, but I guess given the environment we're in today, online is good enough. At least we could see one another.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me again. It's really really fun talking with you, and I hope it was interesting for folks out there.
All right, well, listen, everybody, appreciate tuning in. I want to thank Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine again for being sponsors of the live stream, and thanks to all of you out there watching. Also want to remind you folks that all episodes of Rappin With ReefBum are now available as podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. My next live stream will be next Thursday, January 13th. I'm going to have Mark Levinson on, so that should be another great show. So please tune in then. Until then, be safe, and we'll see you next time.